Oh, back again.
Back again, because we were having so much fun. We were missing this, no?
Yes,
I think a part of us.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
So um, there's still two paragraphs from the Granada chapter. So
Read,
you
read.
read? There are moments in life when we do things that we can't be proud of. The relationship with my wife Anna also came to an end. To carry out the divorce, Anna had sought out a lawyer. The lawyer invited me to her office to negotiate the terms of the divorce with me. Visiting times of the children, right to educate, maintenance, and distribution of the goods. I made my point of view clear, and the lawyer noted what I said. On my next visit, she told me that the judge, a woman who was supposed to grant the divorce, had told the lawyer that she had never seen such a fair and well drafted contract. A contract that took everyone involved into account in the best possible way.
Hmm.
That's a nice thing.
I mean, if we have to do or take certain steps, we could try to do it the best way we can, no?
Yeah.
And if you hear that people getting divorced and they have shared the same bed for 20 years, and then the only idea they have is to ruin the other person, no? Each one going to a lawyer and ruin them. I mean, what is that? What is that? And now, when now my children are coming uh, to visit me, and I always say to them when they go to the house of their mother, I say, give my regards to my former girlfriend, because that's what it is. I mean, she was my girlfriend. No, for some reason I got together with her, or we became together.
You had 5 children together.
Oh, you should not say no. Now everything is bad, or no, it's not. Not no no.
It sounds and feels much better, no, to say former girlfriend than ex-wife.
My ex-wife, ex what? Mm.
So a new chapter begins that is called Back to the Countryside.
Oh,
And once again, a neglected farmstead in need of renovation was purchased. It was a former water mill for grain and olives. The large, elongated property was located on a narrow river with a waterfall and its own spring. We spent several years there, a long time, with 9 children. My 5 children, 3 children of my new partner Dolores, and a boy, son of my wealthy follower. The children still say today that these times were the best years of their childhood. Every morning I would drive the gang to school while we listened to Queen's We Will Rock You at full volume. I'm looking for the pen. Maybe I'm sitting on it. Maybe Floki is sitting on it. We don't know where it is. Okay.
mm-hmm.
In the village where the school was located, the people were friendlier than in Granada, and they were animal lovers. In the marketplace, everyone bought ducklings to raise at home and later release into the river. How beautiful!
Oh,
Wow.
oh, oh.
The river that meandered through the village and our property was always alive with animals. There were fish that moved upstream at certain times and then climbed the 5-meter high waterfall themselves. And frogs, tons of frogs, which, when their time came, engaged in loud concerts.
A nightmare.
The reason we moved to this area was to be able to live close to the final resting place of a very well-known holy woman, Fatima of Seville. Fatima had been the master of Ibn al-Arabi, the Sufi who was born in Spain in Murcia and is generally considered the greatest of all Sufi masters. One day, a few Turkish journalists came to visit and asked us to find the tomb of Saint Fatima in Andalusia for them. They had heard of 2 different places where the tomb could be located, Elvidia or Olvera. Since they themselves had to return to Turkey in the next few days and were running out of time, they suggested that we visit both places and solve the mystery. Dolores called the town hall of Elviria and asked if they knew of the burial site of Saint Fatima. The friendly woman on the other end of the phone answered, "Yes, it's here in the village. There is a sign in the square in front of the church that points directly to the grave. There is absolutely no problem finding the place." We made our way to Elviria with several people, but there was no sign there. Nobody, neither the priest, nor the people in the stores, nor the bar owners, knew anything about an alleged saint's grave. We drove home disappointed. The next day, another call to the town hall, and this is what it turned out to be. The day of the first call was Innocent Saints' Day, a holiday in Spain. On this day, similar to April 1st in Germany, people make jokes to make fun of each other. The woman from the town hall said, "I thought you wanted to laugh at me, and so I joined in on your joke."
Mhm.
A new attempt was started. My longtime companion Martin drove to Olvera with his wife to investigate. He later said that Olvera was a very beautiful village, but there was no trace of a saint's grave. Nobody knew anything about such a burial site, and there were no visible signs of it. A few months later, I myself came to Olvera in the middle of the night with two of my followers. It was almost 1 in the morning, and we drove the car to the top of the hill where the church and cemetery were. My companions, Dolores and Claudia, asked me what the strange feeling was they felt here. I didn't answer and walked towards the closed gate of the cemetery. There was a chain and a heavy padlock. The lock was open, and we went to the cemetery in the dark. It was pitch black. When we reached the first graves, we sat down on one of them and, with our eyes closed, began to perform a short ceremony during which we rhythmically recited our mysterious mantras. When we opened our eyes again, the entire cemetery was bathed in an eerie light. We then sat down for a while on a bench in front of the church, and I confirmed to my companions that the strange feeling came from the presence of Saint Fatima.
When we were walking towards that cemetery, we were talking about that later. I said, well, I said, okay, you are here, you are the master. You said we will do that, so okay, I have to do that. And the lady said, we didn't want to go, but I mean, you are the master, so we followed you. Mhm.
During their first visit alone, Martin and his companion had not noticed this feeling. This kind of indicator, these signs, often remain with some people who have felt it once for the rest of their lives. During a visit to Ronda, Claudia made me aware of this feeling again. I had perceived it myself, but wanted to see if she felt it too. This was very close to the old ancient Arab bath, which is now converted into a museum. One night in the fall, we drove to Ronda with a group of people and settled near the museum to hold a short ceremony. As we murmured our words there, it occurred to me to ask, "Now that you have once again shown us the location of a saint's tomb, why don't you let us know who is buried here?"
They're just talking to the creators. And no, you showed us there's someone here. So who is it?
After the ceremony, Dolores said that with her eyes closed, she saw some kind of writing or sign made of light. Even when she opened her eyes, these strange writings remained visible. Everyone involved noticed the light that suddenly illuminated the surrounding mountains on this moonless night. We went home, and there I asked someone to bring me one of Ibn Arabi's books, stories about his contemporaries, the Sufi masters and saints from Andalusia. I opened the book straight away, and this was written there. Ibn Ashraf of Ronda, one of the masters who could be present in 7 different places at the same time. A lonely person who made his living by collecting chamomile flowers in the mountains. He could often be found lost in thought, writing incomprehensible characters in the sand with a stick. There we had the name.
Yeah. By chance, no? Strange chance.
Incidents.
Coincidence. Yes.
Coincidence, yes. Well, and Olvera is how I came here. So, Fatima, connection.
She sent you here.
Yes. And I listened.
Mm.
And it really is a wonderful place. And it's funny, I never knew the tagline of the village. I had not seen it. But what occurred to me was like when I was in Olvera the first time, I saw it from afar. And I said, I need to go there. Went to Ronda first, but then I went there. And just being there in Olvera feels so peaceful. And
What is
later,
written on the
because of you,
side?
I found out that the Olvera, it says, peace comes out of me.
So, and why these people write that? I mean, they have no idea that this tomb is there. No one knows that.
Yeah.
No, I remember I offered them in the town hall to restore or to put some stained glass window in the church. And they asked, so why you want to do that? And there was no way they couldn't understand it. No. Mm.
Some of my followers had moved to the nearby village, and others came twice a week to take part in the ceremonies and help with the improvement of the farm and house. A young woman who still lived in Granada was ill. Her condition worsened month by month, and finally doctors gave her only 4 weeks to live. We brought this woman onto our property so she could spend her final days with us. A place in the cemetery in the village was sought, and we even commissioned a coffin from one of our students who worked as a carpenter. At the same time, I asked my master to send us an undershirt that he blessed. There in Istanbul, a newly purchased underwear was placed in the middle of the circle formed by the dervishes during the ceremony, and later this linen was given to sick people to heal them. After 2 weeks, we received the shirt, and after a few days, the patient felt more comfortable. The coffin still stands as a chest in my house today, and the then young woman is now over 50 years old. The healing was completely incomprehensible to the doctors.
Now she has to be over 60 years old and she's
Yeah.
still running around.
And the coffin is
And the
still
coffin is here.
doing very well. On our property, there were olive trees, walnut trees, pomegranates, figs, and pine trees. We planted almost 200 trees and shrubs. There was no running water, only a hose that brought water from the spring to the house. There was no electricity. With 9 children, it was an adventure. We later purchased a generator and a washing machine, which made our lives much easier. Whoa, 9
But
children and a washing
later the
machine.
children admitted that at night, as they didn't want to go out of the house to the kind of toilet we had there, they were peeing in the corner of the room. We never became aware of that.
So children's pee doesn't smell.
Well, apparently, because never we became aware of that. Hmm.
On a sunny autumn day, we were in the car with some of our children on the way to the nearest small town to do some shopping. As we drove through a village, we found a boy of about 12 lying on the sidewalk next to his bicycle. A man was kneeling next to him, and several people were standing around the two of them. I stopped, approached, and asked the man who he was and what had happened. He replied that he was a doctor and that the boy had hit a wall on his bike. There he had hit his head against the stones. The boy lay face down and screamed in pain. His head swelled. When I asked whether it might be useful to put some ice on the boy's head, the doctor replied in the affirmative. But none of the bystanders moved to get ice. I put my hand on the boy's shoulder, and at that moment he turned and looked at me. It seemed to me that he saw his mother, and then he lost consciousness. So the pain was over.
He had a really bad mother.
Well, I don't get it.
He saw his mother and
And then he
went into
lost
shock.
consciousness.
Yeah, then the pain was over.
An ambulance arrived. But the driver, who was alone in the vehicle, informed us that he was not allowed to transport the boy to the hospital without someone accompanying him. The doctor let us know that he had to work and could not accompany the boy.
What a kind of doctor.
Yeah. I asked Dolores to drive home with the children and pick me up later at that hospital. Then I got into the ambulance where we placed the boy on the stretcher. At the last moment, the doctor came, took me by the arm, and asked, "Do you know what you have to do?" Yes, I know what I have to do, but you don't seem to know that.
Exactly that, I said to him.
During our drive to the hospital in Ronda, the driver occasionally looked behind us and asked if everything was okay. I held one of the boy's hands in my hands. The boy was asleep, unconscious. Yes, everything is fine, was my answer. At the hospital, the boy was transported to a room where doctors tried to figure out how they could help him. After a short while, the parents showed up. I led them to their son's room, where he appeared to be sleeping peacefully. The father stayed in the room and the mother stayed with me in the hallway. She was crying. I told her what had happened to the son. His name was Hermann. She asked where we lived, and so we started talking about our lives. The woman calmed down so much that she seemed to have forgotten her son. When her husband asked her to come with her since their son had been moved to the first floor, she confusedly asked who they had brought to the first floor.
Yeah, what is that?
Then she wanted to know if there was anything she could do to us, for us, because of the help we had offered to her son. Yes, you can do something, was my answer, which was unexpected for the woman. Promise me that the next time you see someone begging on the street or even get into an accident, you will give something or help. There is nothing you can do for us as we are fine, but there are a lot of people out there who do need help. And something else. You should know that absolutely nothing has happened to your son. He just needs rest. 2 weeks later,
No, you see that woman, she came crying. Her son was there in these apparently bad conditions, and she forgot about her son. So now people are coming here and they say, what is this ambience here? What is that? What is happening here? What is that? You know, they go into a different state.
sometimes they
Just
come
by
and walk
being
up
here.
into the house. So we are on top of the hostel, and there's a staircase leading up, and there is no staircase that anyone has to take ever. But sometimes they just appear completely out. 2 weeks later, the woman came to visit us with Hermann to say thank you with these words: "My son has suffered no damage from the accident, not even a scar." A month after this incident, I was at home with one of my young followers, Zaka. We were just lighting the stove when we suddenly heard the loud rattle of a motorbike in front of the house. Zaka ran into the yard to find out who had arrived there. He came back immediately and, visibly excited, told me, "Your son Hans has had an accident. He's lying up there on the street. He hit a rock with his bike." We raced as fast as we could in the car to the place that had been called Zaka. My son was lying there on the asphalt. Some people were standing around him and someone had placed a sweater under his head. A young man appeared and asked, "Do you want me to take you to the hospital? I work for civil defense." Of course I wanted to, and we loaded Hans, who was conscious, into the car. It was only then that I realized that the motorbike driver who had told us about the accident was a well-known deaf mute in the village who couldn't speak a single word.
And the only thing he could do was.
And yet
And
he
then
was
I asked the sucker, well, how the fuck you could understand that guy? He said, I don't know. And he understood details where my son was, what had happened to him,
accident,
blah, blah, blah,
bike,
blah.
hit a rock,
Hmm,
there.
hmm, hmm,
Communication is much bigger, no?
hmm.
When I asked Saka how he understood this man, he replied, I have no idea, but I understood every word. Once again, I was in the hospital in Rwanda, but this time with my own son.
Look, the same accident,
Bike.
the same crashing against a rock, the young guy crashed against a wall. The same thing.
Once again, I was in the hospital in Rwanda, but this time with my own son. Hans was put on a stretcher and wheeled into the building. A young doctor examined him for a moment in the hallway and said, his lungs are full of water and his brain has suffered damage. Then Hans was taken to another room where we were not allowed to come. After a while, the doctor came and asked him how he knew so quickly what the problem was with my son. Your son has a bruise in the armpit of his right arm. The stain told me what happened to him. What a wonderful young doctor.
With these words, this Bruce told me what had happened to your son.
Maybe also
Wow,
gifted in some
he
way.
was not quite normal.
The doctor explained to us that Hans needed a major operation that could not be carried out here in Rwanda. He had to be transported to Malaga as quickly as possible. Since it was already night, there was no helicopter available, and the only way to get him to a larger hospital was by ambulance. The ambulance was parked at the entrance to the building with the engine running, waiting for my son. But time passed and Hans didn't appear. Finally, the doctor came and told us that my son had fallen into a coma and it was impossible to transport him. A person in a coma would not survive this long journey. After what seemed like an eternity, my son appeared on a cot. His eyes had been taped shut with plaster. He's dead. They just don't have the courage to tell us the truth, I exclaimed. I touched Hans. He was still warm, therefore alive. The doctor said he himself would accompany my son in the ambulance. I asked him if my son would end his life on the way. I asked him if my son would end his life on the way to please stop and allow me to spend the last minutes by his side. The doctor agreed. However, he mentioned that following an ambulance was not allowed. Imagine how interested I am right now to hear that. I will drive through every red light with you, if necessary.
Look, that moment was maybe the first moment that I helped someone to come out of coma. When he's in coma, we cannot transport him. And 10 minutes later, he was out of coma.
So before the time that you realized.
That I realized that it simply happened.
We reached Malaga and the operating room was already prepared. They took my son to the 4th floor and we initially waited on the ground floor. The young doctor from Rwanda came to see us again to say goodbye. I'm terribly sorry, but your son suffered a very bad accident. I wish you tons of luck. Later, we were called into a doctor's office. The doctor asked me if I knew what had happened to my son. Yes, the lungs and brain are damaged, I replied. Is it possible to recover from brain damage over time? Was my question. That is not our biggest problem. At this moment, all we care about is whether or not your son survives the next 2 hours. If so, that would be a gift. That's terrible to hear, no, as a parent?
Well,
Well,
I'm not into that.
Even then?
I'm an observer. No. I'll go on reading. I asked him, where can I drink a coffee?
I wanted to know if the doctor could tell us where there was coffee at that time. His answer was, perhaps a chamomile tea would do you better. No, I needed coffee.
So I go into a state that I'm completely back.
Like an
Completely
observer.
back as an observer. And I'm able, no, I suppose that if people have an accident on the road, it's often because they give up, they got too nervous. No, for me, until the last moment, I would do what I'm told to do. What comes to my mind, and I will do that.
And only in that,
We hear and we obey.
and only in
That's
that
it.
state can we actually
It,
act.
no,
Take action.
yeah, if not, what you are sitting there crying or complaining, or well, that's not helpful for no one. No, I grow in that moment. I get stronger and stronger. No.
At 5 in the morning, we sat on a sofa on the fourth floor and waited. Finally, a door opened and a man came towards us, covered in blood. How's
He
my
was dressed white, and he was really covered in blood. That guy.
how's my son? Your son, look at me. If you had come just a minute later, your son would be dead now. But he is alive.
That was also very good doctor. I mean, shouting at me. My son, what do you want? Look at me. Why don't you ask me how am I?
He is alive. I opened his head and splash! All the blood came out of his head. All over me. The next day, Hans was taken to the intensive care unit, where he was given a bed with 4 other patients, all of whom, like himself, were in a coma. We were allowed to visit twice a day for 20 minutes. During one of those visits, the devices to which my son was connected indicated that his life was coming to an end. There was no doctor in the room. The nurse ran into the hallway and I heard her call, "Doctor, doctor, come quickly, the boy goes, he's dying." I stood alone in front of the bed and had absolutely no idea what to do.
Well, you see, in that moment, no, apparently you see your son dying in front of your eyes. No, I will not go on my knees and, oh God, could you please save him? No, I do something else. Some information is coming to me, and then I will do that, whatever it is. I'm very concentrated, very in the moment, what people are looking for, but they are not able to be in the moment because you are not able to be in the moment. You are only able to be in the moment if the creator puts you in the moment, then you are in the moment. If not, it's bullshit to try to be in the moment. It's a mental process. You are just doing the opposite. You go away from the moment by thinking about that. No, it will be done to you. Okay.
I had absolutely no idea what to do. I'm not a doctor. I didn't know what to do, but I clearly remember what I did. I grabbed my son by the collar of his shirt, pulled him up, and shouted at him, "Who gave you permission to go? There is only one person in this world who can give you this permission, and that's me, and I didn't give you permission." I stood in front of him with my fist raised and added, "If you really want to leave, give me a sign and I will send you to the other side
He
with
was
one
not
blow."
able because he was in coma. He couldn't give a sign.
A doctor had come into the room without me noticing and was standing by my side. Hans came back to life and woke up from his coma at that moment.
So how could you, I mean, with your reasoning, with your mind, believe saying something like that could help the person? Oh no, please don't go. It's still not your time. You are so young, and your mother and your sister and your blah 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 blah. All that bullshit. No,
And fuck you,
it
I'm
came
not
to
dying.
me And I did it without thinking about it. I just brought it out, and immediately he came back to life and out of coma.
The doctor, who had apparently witnessed everything, looked at me and said, "Wow."
He really, it's not normal in Spain, and that's many years ago. He really said, wow.
From now on, you can spend 24 hours every day with us here in the hospital. And we did, but only for about 18 hours, as we had to get some rest in our hotel opposite the hospital. An older man was lying in the same room with my son. He was also in a coma. Every day his son came to visit, stood next to his father's bed, and looked at his watch every 5 minutes. I asked Dolores to go over to him and say this to him. "While you're coming to visit, please take your father's hand in yours. There are two possibilities. Your father is leaving, or he's coming back. If your father senses your presence, he may come back. If he leaves, your memories of him would be much more pleasant than seeing yourself standing in front of your father's bed, looking at your watch."
Well, people don't know what to do. They are not in that state. They don't know what to do.
No.
It's just uncomfortable for them.
I had to go into the hotel for a moment, and when I re-entered the room, the young man was still standing next to his father's bed, looking at the clock. I approached him from behind and slapped him firmly on the back with my flat hand. "Turn around. Whatever that woman told you, that's what you're going to do." He very timidly took his father's hand, who was waiting for an operation that could not be carried out because he was in a coma. In this condition, it is difficult to control the anesthesia. The next morning, the son ran up to me in the hallway and said excitedly, "He's woken up. They're taking him to the operating room." I ended up helping the doctors and nurses with their work and really enjoyed my stay there. Hey, can you two please be nice to each other? Can you please be nice to each other? Yeah? Maybe to make space for you? It might seem like we have a very small house that everyone needs to crowd into the same space.
Come here. Come. Come on. Come.
I don't want. Okay. My son was moved to another floor. Nobody was in a coma here. I spoke to the patients to encourage them. I heard a woman crying softly from a door and asked for permission to enter the room. There I found a young woman crying in her bed. She explained to me that she was waiting for surgery, but was afraid for her two children if she did not return from the procedure. With a smile, I assured her that the operation will have a good outcome. That is something you felt in that moment, the message that came, it will be fine, or you just said it because it's
I'm
better
lying.
anyway? It's a
But
positive
it's
suggestion.
coming. No, but it's coming to me.
It's coming to you.
I look and I say, whatever
Comes.
comes. Me as a person, no, I don't know. So me, I would say I'm lying
Mm.
because I don't know. No, but that thought comes to me and I bring the thought out. That's it.
To make it easier for this woman to believe in a good outcome, I went with Dolores to the street in front of the hospital to look for a flower shop. I wanted to buy flowers for this woman. We found a shop nearby and went in. A woman appeared to serve us. We asked her for a bouquet of flowers. The woman looked at me seriously and asked, "Why are you here?" I told her the story of my son's accident in a few words. She told us to wait a moment and went into a back room. She could be seen sitting at a table moving something with her hands. Then she came back with a red rose in her hand. "The rose is for your son, and you should know that absolutely nothing has happened to the boy."
What did I say to the other lady? The accident in Ronda. Be sure
Yes,
You
absolutely.
should know nothing has happened to your son.
Right after the accident happened, we called Don Carlos and he told us that the accident was not about my son, but had another reason. We shouldn't be alarmed. Nothing happened to Hans. We got the same answer from my master, Kemal Baba, when we asked for advice there. We paid for the flowers, took the rose, said thank you, and went back to the hospital. I put the flowers on the woman's bedside table, and her operation was a success, allowing her to hug her children again. We gave my son the red rose, and after a few days, the surgeon who operated on him came. My son's head was completely bandaged. The doctor stepped in front of Hans, took his head between both hands, and pressed his hands together very firmly. Hans screamed. The doctor smiled. The head is healed. You can go back home.
That was a real surgeon. I saw that guy. I said, no, it's okay, you can go.
It didn't break into pieces. It's okay. 2 days later, we said goodbye to the doctors and nurses and thanked them warmly. We gathered our belongings in the hospital and the hotel and went with Hans to the flower shop to say goodbye to this woman too. There was no flower shop there. No matter how much we looked and searched, there was no flower shop there.
You remember Deborah, her vision when she was a child?
Yes.
Hmm? Yeah.
Things just.
What can you say? I mean, I tell these things because they have happened to me. That's what has happened. But you cannot explain. You cannot even, I mean, as a normal person, you cannot believe. You would say that guy is talking nonsense. That's not possible. No? Everything is possible.
Everything.
That's it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Over.
And out.
Goodbye.